Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by Hammerspace, where we're aiming to tell you how to solve your AI data pipeline challenges and deliver tangible AI application outcomes. My name is Kurt Kukine. I'm Senior Director of AI Marketing here at Hammerspace, and joining me today is Sam Noonan. He's VP of AI and Business Development here at Hammerspace. Hey, Sam.
Good morning, afternoon.
And online here, we also have Prashant Sharma, CTO and Co-Founder at Secuvy. Hey, Prashant.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining.
And Mike Seashols, who's CEO at Secuvy. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
You bet. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
A couple of housekeeping items. You can see here on your interface that you have the ability to type in questions. We will be monitoring the Q&A, so feel free to type them in anytime you have a question, or if you want to help direct today's session, you can go ahead and do that live. We'll answer them as they pop up, or answer them in context, or if we get to the end and we haven't answered your question, we'll go ahead and do so there. So right off the bat, we have an interactive part of the webinar today. Please do take a second to take a look at the question here and log your answer. I'll give it just a second to collect everybody's answer. But this is a pretty fundamental question. Have you heard of AIDP before? Right, we're forging really a new market here. That's a convergence of data storage and data management to deliver a complete end-to-end solution for folks who are struggling with taking unstructured data and turning it into AI-ready information. And AIDP is a fundamental leap forward in how we're doing that. But not everybody has heard of it. So just want to kind of take a step back and gauge what the level of knowledge is in this session today. All right, so we are at close to over 75% of folks here have at least heard about it, with 55% really understanding what it is. So, but glad to have folks who kind of have no idea at all as well. So I think everybody will get a really good takeaway from this session. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sam, where he's going to talk about the platform in general and how we're really addressing the challenges in this space today. Sam, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Obviously, there's a lot to chat about, right? AI is this ever-changing, ever-evolving thing that we're all trying to wrangle, right? And it sometimes is easier for the model builders, the AI-born companies, and even the smaller companies that are a little more nimble. But as we think about enterprise AI and what's there, right, with all these heritage systems and systems of record, and how do we really pull all this stuff together? Most of the people we talk to find this as a massive challenge of how do I actually launch into AI. So let's start with a little bit of history, right? And where this demand's coming from and what we see as the new waves of challenges. Because I think if we understand the problem accurately, then we start understanding why these solutions make so much more sense. So we all kind of understand generative AI. I mean, it's what we see today, right? We talk to this in a number of platforms, whether it's Chat or Gemini or Claude or whatever, but ask it a question, get a contextual answer. And these were built off massive amounts of trained data, right? And still are. We think about this in a single data center, and we laugh about how people rip pages out of books to go just get more data to go increase the parameters inside these models. But what we're seeing is that's not really the challenge. And maybe that was yesterday's challenge. And while we're still trying to do that within the context of our enterprises, it's really kind of limited to RAG, right? Or maybe fine tuning some models. The bigger push we see is agentic AI, right? And it seems like everyone has an agent for everything today. But the reality is agentic AI doesn't run in just one data center or one cluster of GPUs, right? It's all these different applications that want to talk to each other and interact. And now we're looking at agents making decisions on data about reordering inventory or medical bill processing and all sorts of stuff. And so now we're seeing it needing data from all sorts of different sources. And then really what's going to continue to compound this problem, right, is physical AI. And while we all look at the humanoid robots and that sort of stuff, you've got to think about even just a simple manufacturing line, but the amount of sensor data and 4K data that's streaming from a simple conveyor belt, right, today is creating a massive new footprint of things that we need to triage, break apart, understand, and pull into these AI pipelines. And so, our vision has always been, hey, it's not just about can you run, a support chat bot on a handful of GPUs and answer your customers' questions quicker. We see this world where AI is going to run everywhere, right? Across your cloud, in your data centers, at your branch. Heck, we even have a customer that's doing this with their air conditioning trucks, right? And doing AI interaction and real-time inventory management on the trucks. Like, things are coming from all over the place. So what does this really mean for us, right? It ends up in a chaotic data estate, right? This is the problem we see most of our customers have when they try to launch an AI initiative. It's literally that the enterprise has stuffed things in every single corner that they can, right? There's an archaeological dig of brands of NAS and cloud systems and all sorts of stuff as we try to stitch everything together to really, get an AI outcome. And so that really ends up kind of categorizing what we see most of our customers and potential customers falling into these two kind of categories. It's the fear of missing out, right? It's AI or die, right? You can read all these statistics about if my company doesn't adapt, like, am I still going to be around in a couple of years, or am I losing out to a competitor, right? Because they can do something quicker or turn around a quote faster, those types of things. There's a massive pressure cycle around this. The other side of that, right, is the fear of messing up, right? This FOMO principle. It's, what if I pick the wrong technology? I'm spending a lot of money on this thing. Like, how do I make sure I get what I need to out of it? Will it even deliver an ROI to my business? And then we're going to talk about the security and governance and exposure of this stuff too, right? Because it's all fun until the CEO's salary makes it into the chat. And so as we think about just these challenges that are in front of us, right, it really kind of comes down to what we see as three key areas. One is it's data fragmentation, right? Is it things are everywhere. We see customers spending massive amount of time trying to copy data and collect data and process data and move data. And it becomes just a real barrier, right, to being able to get to an AI outcome. The second piece is really the skills gap, right? Is how are we turning everybody from storage admins to data scientists to security and risk personnel into AI operators? And there's so many tools that you have to deal with to do data preparation, data collection, and process this all into a vector database, right? That can even chat with an LLM. And then, we mentioned it a minute ago, but people are spending millions upon millions on massive amounts of infrastructure to hope something works well, right? We could size an ERP system in your organization and know exactly how that works. But understanding all this unstructured data, how is that going to work? The accuracy, are we going to get a 1% improvement, a 4% improvement in time to quote, or, customer success accuracy is really hard to predict. So this gets a little more compounded, right? Because you've heard about AI factories, right? And this makes complete sense, right? We put all this stuff together. NVIDIA has designed this in a way where there's an architecture that everything should work together seamlessly. And it kind of makes sense, right? You plug in power, you plug in data, and out pops tokens and outcomes and all sorts of stuff. But the reality is plugging in data, right? It really becomes the number one challenge, especially for enterprises, right? It's hard to visualize across all these silos. There's a lot of complexity. And there's this thing called data gravity, right? Like, it's expensive to move. And oh, by the way, this factory kind of says, well, why don't you put one more silo in your organization? Everybody's like, yay. Not really, right? It just becomes one more place that we're now copying data to go make this magic happen. we view this differently, right? Fundamentally, we think, well, what if we could pull all of those things into a namespace, right? Into a single operating area. Like we do this with compute, we do it with networking, and why not storage, right? Why not put all this in a place where we now have very simple ways to access storage, where we're not looking at, some 26-year-old data scientist walking in and saying, hey, I want God level access to all these things. And well, here's your 27 logins to our different storage environment. If we could pull all that together and then move that pipeline into this too, we think you can plug data into an AI factory. We think you can get these outcomes much faster. And that's what we're going to talk through today. So let's talk a little bit about the Hammerspace AI data platform. What is this thing, right? So on the left, you see a diagram, and it's really taking what we had as our original Hammerspace data platform and adding a couple cool things to it, right? It's our MCP server, which we'll talk about a little bit how it does. It's hosting that vector database. It's moving with best of breed technology with NVIDIA's blueprints and software, and really wrapping this into an outcome, right? To a solution that isn't a toolkit. It's not a bag of Legos you have to drop on your desk and put together. And wait, I know that may sound offensive because I love Legos too, and putting it together is fun sometimes. But when your boss's boss is sweating you to say, hey, when's that project going live? Sometimes you wish you could just buy the thing that works. And that's what we're trying to deliver in this solution. It's collapsing all those tool sets, right? It's getting people to a point where you don't have to understand NIMS and Nemo Retriever and Helm charts and Kubernetes and NV ingest. It's not something that every organization is really prepared to pull into their stack. And then lastly, it's about meeting you where you are in your AI journey. Instead of jumping on our AI journey, we can start small, right? 4 servers, be able to attack project-based AI, the solutions you need within your organization, and not think about having to buy petabytes of flash just to create a duplicate set of data. So when we really look at this, the idea is it should be as simple as deploy the solution into your environment. We'll talk about how that's going to work here shortly. Connect it to your hybrid enterprise data, whether that's NAS, whether that's Linux and Windows shares, or whether that's cloud data. And then to automate this embedding and data pipeline, right? It's about getting past the first couple thousand files, and how do you connect to the millions of files within your organization? How do you make sure they continue to get processed when net new files are created or existing files are changed? And that's really the premise of what an AI data platform should do, right? It should holistically connect to your data, not become another silo, and be able to give you the ability to move data from all these places that have been stored in your organization into usable, real-time monetized data.
Hey, Sam. I know you get into it on this slide, but we do have a question from the audience, and related towards probably MCP server and things like that. But specifically, maybe you want to expand on, while you're talking to this right here, is how do we integrate our AI data platform with other external tools? Specifically, the question was around AI harnesses.
Sure, I'm happy to kind of wrap that in right at this point. I always think pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And so let's talk for a minute about what's inside AIDP, right? So as we think about, you see these 4 servers, right? That's kind of our minimal starting config. We can scale a handful of these, whether it's, around ingest performance, whether it's around capacity that we need within the solution, or whether it's around the outputs, right? The tokens and queries and everything to make sure that vector database scales appropriately to meet your organizational needs. And what's nice is we can do this as you grow, right? We can start here and we continue to expand in any 3 of those vertices, right? To continue to meet this. It means you don't have to re-platform. You don't have to do something different, right? Just because you started here. So as we talked about, right, this is embedding NVIDIA's technology. So it's all about how do we, take the best of breed blueprints, right? This one's, specifically built around their RAG blueprint, but there's video search and summation. There's a bunch around physical AI that this platform will continue to expand into. But it's taking that, right, pulling that into the system. The whole idea is, if we go back to data gravity and getting, data to the GPUs was hard. The idea was like, well, maybe we bring GPUs to the data. Well, why not process this where it lives? This starts to make a lot more sense. Secondly, it is about that high performance, vector database. It's about serving that application, right, with super low latency so that chat feels very interactive, right? It's up to date with the most relevant information. One of the biggest challenges we saw within our customers in cultural adoption of an AI deployment is the second that thing's out of sync or it doesn't have the most current information, they go back to their old ways, right? They abandon that app. And so being able to put a platform in this that makes sure you always have the most up-to-date information is incredibly important for the success of launching an AI application. Kurt, you brought up MCP, right? And this is really the connective tissue, right? And I know there's a lot of debate in the industry about MCP and what's next. But for us, model context protocol, right, was a great way to start integrating with all these other platforms. And while it's the connective tissue for us inside AIDP, it also connects to all the agents externally. If we're going to be a data platform, right, for AI, then we should be able to interact with all this stuff. So as you think about other agents that need to interact with data movements or data access and all sorts of stuff, that all happens through MCP for us. And then we'll talk about data intelligence and governance as well, right? We've got Secuvy with us today. We're going to jump to some of their intelligence here in a minute. But before I jump, right, let's talk about kind of why our AI data platform is slightly different than everyone else's. So first, you can copy to us, right? And this is what most of our competition does, right? They go land a new big fancy storage array. They bolt on some GPUs and say, hey, take petabytes of data, move it over, right? And we can do that too if that's the right answer for your organization. But what we see more people do is thinking about how do I use data in place? Like I already store this somewhere, right? Why can't I just reach in and understand that data as it lives on these other systems? And that's really kind of one of our superpowers, right? Is that I can kind of take a read-only snapshot of all that data, pull it all through our system, be able to see that within minutes, right? And start understanding the data, right? That's really that G.I. Joe mantra is knowing's half the battle, right? As well as I can continue to take over that entire system. And so we see a lot of people say, hey, I need to upgrade storage anyway. I need to make this AI ready. But, I'm 3 years into a CapEx investment in platform X. Great. We can actually kind of layer on top of that particular platform, modernize it, right? Give you all the parallel file access you need, all the new features that come with AI storage, while still maintaining your investment in those disks, right? And in the flash that sits inside those arrays. And this further extends to the cloud, right? It makes it super easy for us to now be able to see data in any format. And by the way, you don't have to pick just one of these. All four of these avenues work together to really create a cohesive platform, even to the point of once we can kind of see and own most of the stuff, we can help them intelligently use storage, right? So while so much of this is about AI flowing through this stuff, we also can start tiering data appropriately. What if you need to run a good portion of that data and you're using a hyperscaler like OCI or AWS, and you say, well, hey, now that I've identified a bunch of data, can I move it up there, by Thursday at 11 a.m.? Right, we've got you. That's all built into our platform and orchestration. And so, to the question about AI harnesses and all sorts of stuff, we're an open platform. So what's great is we can write all sorts of different harnesses. You can write some of these things too, right? We expose so many endpoints as well from functionality through our MCP server that we think we're probably one of the most flexible platforms on the market when it comes to integrating with both existing tool sets, right? Or if you look at this as the easy button for your AI journey. So, Kurt, I know we got another question.
Make sure everybody's paying attention here, and we've got the next survey question up. And it would be great to just know, where are folks struggling, right? We can tune our presentation here in the next little bit to the answers we get here, right? Is it the fact that data is distributed everywhere and it's making it difficult to get the data into an AI data pipeline? Or is it the fact that there's all these tools and all these people, maybe across business units, who are trying to get access to the data and having a hard time connecting to it? Or is it really you've done a POC and now trying to scale that across an organization is what's difficult? All of these things can influence how AI projects go, both for a project-based orientation or across an entire organization. And we see folks struggling with any one of these or all of these at the same time. And so we've got a relatively interesting distribution here. Yes, right? The data silo piece seems to be pretty primary. The tools piece, the ability to scale, but then also just that first step. And that's another place, right, where Hammerspace's AIDP solution can help, because this isn't, right, Sam emphasized that, this isn't a major investment in a whole new storage infrastructure, right? This comes in on top of your existing infrastructure and now allows that to be modernized to be an entire end-to-end solution. And a key piece of that end-to-end solution is the visibility into the data and making sure you're maintaining the security within that data and the governance of that data. And so, you know, what better lead in to our partners here than that. So Prashant, I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit about your solution and maybe have a chat here with Sam really quick about this idea of, you know, two sides of the AI data brain.
Yeah, we, you know, Kurt, it's always a fun transition, right? Because I think as we talked about being a platform, right? We do a lot. So as we transition from what is this AI data platform of being able to assemble data, right? So breaking the fragmentation challenge, creating kind of a simple namespace, right? So I can take petabytes of storage from across your organization and smash it together, right? So great, now I see all 10 petabytes in a namespace, right, in a bucket, and this is great. I can do is like, what is it, right? Like for us, that was half the battle, right? And so we always had this stuff on the left-hand side, right, which was the file intelligence, right? You know, part of the Hammerspace, you know, secret sauce is we separate the metadata from the data, the what from the where a little bit, right? And that's what allows us not only to sit on the top existing platforms, but to orchestrate and manage and move data throughout these namespaces so well. And so we understood the performance criteria and the policies and permissions and the roles, right? Because that's all POSIX information, that's all file system information. The harder part, right, was the value of the data. It was, how does it catalog? Is it sensitive? What sort of risky information is inside of it, right? And, you know, as we sought out different partnerships in the industry, right, Secuvy continued to rise to the top as we looked at it really data security partners that had, you know, true intelligence, right? It wasn't just regular expression matching and, oh, this looks like a social security number. It was a reality of how do we use AI to understand our data well, classify it, govern it, and then protect it. And so this is really why we've kind of entered this partnership with Secuvy. And Prashant, I'm glad you're here today, right? There's a lot to talk about, you know, outside of just files, right? But really from the view of how a data scientist or how a security, you know, a CISO or someone looks at data and governance is from a completely different angle than what we always did from traditional IT and storage administration.
All right. Thank you, Sam. So with Hammerspace, you get the file intelligence, right, where the data is stored, you know, you can do orchestration around it. What Secuvy offers on top of this is we are offering data intelligence added to it. So now you have a unique way to not only look at what data it is, where it is stored, but you can do governance around on top of it. Okay, so this is basically what we are offering in the AI data platform. There are three things on the top here, which, okay. So you'll see like terms in here. So one is auto classification. What this means is typically if you are, let's say, a storage admin, or even if you are a data scientist, somebody says, hey, can you classify this data for GDPR? Or can you classify for my internal research purposes? Or maybe like SEC compliance. So that becomes a very hard problem. We simplify that problem. We have been doing this for a couple of years now, where we have inbuilt models which can help you with these kind of difficult non-pattern data classification. You cannot write like rules or patterns for like your patient allergy symptoms or chemical formulations or some of these. Second thing, what we do is we offer a linkage of data. So if you look at how AI has evolved, right? So you have a lot of unstructured data, and you might have a contract. Let's say you have some clinical trial data, and it is related to patients. It is related to research. It has information about external vendors who are sending you this clinical trial data. So classification itself is not enough. Okay, you need to link all these pieces together to make a decision what to do with the data. So these are the two unique features we offer as a platform within Secuvy. And what this helps is now you have a trusted data plane. Okay, you basically can create a trusted data plane which will help you decide this is the data sets I'm using for my training purposes or inference as a service or data prep purposes. I can then publish it for rest of the organization. So in a nutshell, we are combining the Secuvy classification with Hammerspace and giving you like a persona-based data orchestration tools. And the persona here is anybody who is like doing IT orchestration, like storage admins or a ML practitioner, or it could even be like a data or security compliance team. The use case we'll go over today is more focused on clinical trial. It is looking at patient trial data. And then there are different sort of compliance which we are looking at, from HIPAA to data sovereignty specific, which is DPDP, or it could be even part of the CFR. So what we'll cover today is I'll give you like how we are helping, from a 1,000-foot view, how we are helping like a storage admin or from a ML practitioner from 1,000-foot view, how we are helping them, how we integrate with our MCP client interfaces, and we'll go through our flow, how the MCP works, which is purely an agentic workflow, where we make it pretty simple to click, connect, scan, orchestrate. Okay. These agentic workflows, they can run in parallel, so you can classify petabytes of data at scale. And the goal here is to simplify everybody's life, to reduce the time you spend in looking at like collecting the data, organizing it, looking at it, analyzing it. And finally, we'll give you a preview of how we integrate with Hammerspace and through their Objectives API. And it allows the storage admin to based on the purpose of the orchestration, right? I want to optimize my GPU. I want to do synthetic data generation. I want to basically just do a lifecycle management of a data. So how do the objectives come into picture? So this is our central plane. It's kind of like a data orchestration plane where you see like KPIs published on the top. We also have like if you see, you'll see different objectives in here. So lifecycle management. Lifecycle management is all about, hey, my data is changing. If you find new data, and let's say it has new stuff, like somebody added like chemical compositions or somebody added clinical trial information, I want to tag it in a certain way. So these are some of the activities you orchestrate. There might be a need for GPU optimization. You have a huge GPU cluster and you want to make sure you have an affinity to that data. It is living next to the GPU rack, right? NVMe. So we actually can help you decide that this is the data, what is needed for training purposes. And you can then orchestrate policies to send data with affinity to specific GPU clusters. So the goal here is to ensure that you have the highest maximum level of GPU utilization possible. You might have an issue with, you might have a challenge with securing your RAG and different agents. Somebody could be exposing CEO salary information in a prompt, or your research information might get leaked in an internal prompt. So how do you prevent those? So we have guardrails, which will allow you to prevent any kind of data leakage or any kind of data being exported via agentic AI systems. A lot of companies are storing nation-specific data. And we know there are data sovereignty rules around it, like you cannot export Canadian resident data out of Canada, or Switzerland, you cannot export MAC addresses out of Switzerland. So how do you comply as a storage admin for these data sovereignty rules? So our goal is to make this easy. And we do this via our data linkage and classification, where we identify the full graph of that particular data subject. And now you know what all Canadian resident data do you store. how much do you store, whether these are minors, and do you have consent for these people? So those kind of use cases, we make it very easy to do. There might be use cases around where you want to prep data. Like let's say you're a storage admin, your data science team says, okay, I need to have a data set where I can do training, and I want to have synthetic data. You can't really give social security numbers for training from your prod environment, right? So you need a very easy way to anonymize the data or generate synthetic data or even scrub the data. So we make it very easy to create these data sets. And now you can say that, hey, this data is available for your training purposes, and then you can send it for data orchestration purposes. The last point, like I highlighted the one non-pattern in here. Typically with the rise of LLMs and Gen AI, right? We have a huge data, unstructured data, which has non-pattern, right? These include like your financial disclosure, your intellectual property, clinical trials. You might have SEC filings in there, like next quarterly report. For some of these systems, you cannot write rules and patterns to classify these, and that's the problem we solve. We have different machine learning models, AI models, which we have been working on for a couple of years now, which can classify these non-pattern data. So our data plane, what we are publishing, helps you with some of these to begin with. And the goal here is to simplify a lot of these tasks, which are very hard to do today. So how do we do this? So here is a case study on a clinical trial data. So let's say you are a storage admin in a company. Your research team is asking, hey, I need some data for my training purposes. So your job is to basically identify all the data, tag it, and then remove all the IP, the intellectual property data, and make sure like marketing team or research team can only see what they want to, right? So how do you do this? So we have Secuvy, which is acting as an MCP client, and Hammerspace is acting as an MCP server doing all the data orchestration. This is our workflow. So in the first step, we are basically listing and reading all the files. And here, basically, we are collecting like a data bill of material. Secuvy here is doing step 3 and 4, where we are classifying all the information, all non-pattern data. We are tagging it. We are scrubbing if needed. And then we send this information for Hammerspace to publish and orchestrate. Okay. So to make this happen, we have published different MCP agentic interfaces. So we are doing the prompt generation inside. We're helping you with the prompt generation. So we'll provide a list of pre-generated prompts depending on the use case. So if you are, let's say, a security and compliance use case, so you'll get prompts which are related to data sovereignty, right? Or even like if you want to prevent access use cases. If you are an AI practice leader, then you might have needs on, hey, I want to basically send this, use my data affinity and make sure my GPU have maximum utilization. So we have a predefined set of prompts based on the industry, based on the vertical, based on the persona, and they are ready to use out of the box. So what these do is, and this is what the prompt interfaces will do internally. So this is like an example of the clinical trial prompt probably. So you might have use cases around data ingestion, where you want to place like DICOM files on an NFS share, or you want to basically say that, hey, I don't want to cache this SMB clinical share data, and it is restricted to a certain users in the company. So you can basically handle those use cases with just typing an English prompt on the chat interface. Okay. Your security team as a storage admin might be asking you, hey, I want to comply with this kind of compliance. I want to make sure that, can you certify this? Can you audit this? So we basically make it very easy for you to create these kind of workflows and generate a audit log where it is easily certified. And once this is all set up, now you have a data bill of material. You can basically set up AI pipeline, synthetic data pipeline, and depending on the persona, depending on the audience, depending on the use case, you can then orchestrate the data for a specific storage, for specific training purposes, for inference as a service use case, or even sending it to another MCP server for training purposes. So, so once we have done this, now Hammerspace comes into picture and does the real data orchestration. So Sam, if you want to explain how the magic works out.
No, I think it's interesting, Prashant. Like, I learn things from you every time I listen too, right? Because having been a storage admin most of my career, right, I don't understand all the compliance portions, right? And I imagine most of our audience doesn't either, right? Like you always use terms and acronyms and different stuff. And I'm like, thank God, like there is the other half of the brain to this, right? Because there's so much that happens that we need to protect and understand AI data. And that was really the impetus for this partnership. And to Prashant's point is that, we had all these objectives and kind of the policy engines inside Hammerspace already. But those were set up to say, hey, take data from X and move it to Y, right? Or, hey, if this particular condition exists, I want you to tier this data off or do something. But it missed the security aspects, right? The governance aspects of all of this. And so now it allows our objectives engine to go ask more intelligent questions. Should I move that data? Can that data be moved? Is that particular data set allowed to go from country X to country Y, or from an on-prem environment to a cloud environment? And all this can be done with natural language. And Prashant, sometimes I think you hit that so fast, and it's like, we're not having to draw all these complex arrows and pipelines and all sorts of stuff. This was all done through AI discovery. And now, without having to be AI experts, we can say something like, hey, move this particular directory from its current location to a less performant tier storage that I need to keep for 30 days. And we can understand the performance tier of that storage, the security implementations, all that sort of stuff that comes into how do we interact together, right? So, you really become the policy engine for us, right? That extra layer of data intelligence that says, hey, we shouldn't blindly just copy things, right? We should understand what we're copying, why we're copying, and even provide an audit log to how those things moved or who approved that data move to happen.
All right. So here is basically, thanks, Sam. So here's basically what we are offering. Looking at lot of unstructured data, especially files, and then grouping and classification is really hard problem, especially for non-pattern data, what we are being asked to use today in our AI data pipeline. So we make it very easy. Hammerspace does the orchestration. It makes it like very simple to just go and type in an English prompt. We'll make the orchestration happen, along with top of the NVIDIA NeMo and other interfaces with the published blueprint. So now you have an easy way to orchestrate all your AI data workflows. To make it simple, we have an MCP interface where you can either connect it to your agentic workflows. We also have REST-based interfaces and webhooks, because when you're looking at like large amount of data, we might publish or notify you of different events, right? We identified something new, take an action, so you can get alerted on some of these. So MCP-based interface, webhooks, REST, all are available. The data lifecycle governance is all built in within these prompt interfaces, where you can set up these orchestration rules. And using simple English, we will convert it to actionable items on the backend side. And whether you want to do HIPAA, whether you want to do high trust, or whether you want to do any other kind of compliance, you want to do any data security, you want to do data scrubbing, you want to comply with EU AI Act, or you just want to make sure that your AI doesn't have any intellectual property from your team, these are the tasks. We basically make it very simple with the help of an English prompt. Ultimately, our goal is to reduce the time for model deployment by automating most of the activities you spend time on data prep today. It is very hard to for a data scientist or even a storage admin to collect the data, scrub it out, certify it, filter it, cleanse it. We make these tasks very easy. And depending on the audience, whether your marketing team needs it, whether your research team needs it, or even your compliance or legal team is asking you for audits, our goal is to make this very simple. So once you have the data available, you can publish this as part of a data marketplace. And now anybody inside the company is free to use this data marketplace for research purposes. You can go to market faster, and your board, your stakeholders, what they are expecting for you. So you have a better financial ROI with this platform. That's our goal.
Hey, Sam, and this might be a great time to answer a couple of questions from the audience. So first of all, Prashant and Sam, how does Secuvy and Hammerspace assure determinism in enforcing compliance rules so we're sure that that's working?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I saw some from Craig and Roxanne and different people across the thing. So yeah, so first of all, let's take it from who's the smartest, right? So, without Secuvy integrated into Hammerspace, right? We're going to use our rules engine, right? We're going to use permissions and RBAC and some basic things that we can do with our own platform and our own orchestration engine to make that deterministic decision of, can we move it, should we move it, can that be replicated, etc. When we integrate with Secuvy, right, for us, Secuvy becomes the intelligent layer, right? It further expands our own security premises to say, hey, that is your compliance layer, right? That has everything from both the understanding of the files, we enrich the data sources inside Secuvy, and that really becomes that system of record for compliance, right? About what should move, what can move, what didn't happen. Secuvy understands things, as Prashant, pointed out about legal holds and all sorts of things, right? That rules engine really becomes master, right, in that particular configuration when we're hooked in with Secuvy. And then I saw, Roxanne kind of asked too, right, about just kind of where does it sit, right, in the legacy data layer? And this is part of why we're adding this in, right? Historically, it was yet one more add-on and one more tool, right, that was bolted on. And it really sat within the security teams, right? And that was the traditional customer set, that Secuvy focused on in some of their sales cycles, right? It was really around compliance and security and those types of things. And what we're seeing is that AI had such a massive demand for these same types of things. It's like, why keep that in separate teams, right? What we always almost saw was kind of three personalities that show up in AI projects, right? There's traditional IT and infrastructure that's always owned these storage systems and arguably has the data, right? There's the BU and AI engineers and everyone that's trying to put this together, and it's somewhere where the funding comes from. And then there's the security and risk team, right? And Prashant we both saw over and over again, like every AI POC got the door slammed shut at the security desk, right? And that's really what this is trying to solve, is de-risk the ability to taking AI real. So now when we understand what data it is, can we use that particular data? We've classified it, we've anonymized it. It takes all the scariness out of using that data for AI. And so, to answer your question, it used to live off to the side, or it was a bolt-on on top, or we were governing certain amounts of data usage. We're trying to pull that all in so it becomes a true pipeline, right? From where data is created to where it lives to how it's used to ultimately what AI application it ends up living and working with.
So I've got a question for Mike here. You've been involved in the tech industry for a little bit of time, and just wanting to get kind of your take on how you see this kind of solution impacting the market.
Yeah, I'll tell you, thanks, Kurt. I always get enamored every time I hear Sam talk and Prashant talk, because, these are huge problems and challenges for all of us. And I would summarize to say that this partnership is almost kind of a game changer in the industry, because we solve three of the biggest problems that I think are extremely challenging. The first one is, what's the appropriate data? And sometimes that's what shouldn't be used, but also what should be used. So we have the ability to understand that data, have that data intelligence, so we can filter out stuff into the pipeline, or we could filter stuff out of the pipeline. And that's a big clog in the whole wheel of trying to get AI to get deployed. So the filtering of the data that's appropriate. The second is, once that data is deployed into your computing environment, it gets optimized. And because your computing environment is a huge financial, not only risk, but investment. So being able to use your current storage investments, being able to optimize your GPU performance and your memory performance, because the data so much better, that solves a huge problem on cost. It also improves a significant amount on time to market. And then that third one is time to market. A lot of times it takes so much longer to figure out what goes into the model, then how to deploy the model for processing. Those things are automated to the point that you can utilize what you already have. So you get, as Prashant's thing, a 10 times advantage over time to market. And the ROI, the time to value, is weeks, and it's not months or years. So, I mean, I couldn't be happier, having been a data guy for a long time, to be able to have the ability to put both the data intelligence with the optimization of the computing environment together. So it's a very unique and I think a game changer partnership that we've built here.
Yeah, Mike, too, as we've kind of envisioned this whole partnership, right? It's really kind of allowed us to think about things differently, right? To your point, having been on the storage and data infrastructure side forever, like it was always about managing boxes, right? I thought about everything in terms of arrays and shares and permissions and mappings and all this sort of stuff. And, as we see AI, really take hold, and where you guys have come from, forever, is it's always about files. It's about the data itself, right? It was managing, as Prashant called out, these data bill of materials and these data marketplaces and curating specific data sets to be used in research. And now you have AI step in. It's like, hey, I want everything, right? I get smarter the more I see, learn, and get exposed to. And so, we're past the curated data sets that we're like, I want to aim at my past 5 years of NAS shares and home directories and see what I can glean from all that data, because we didn't know what it was and is it valuable, right? And so, it's as you and I really kind of thought about this partnership, it came down to four things, right? And really this vision of thinking about what if metadata is king, right? Back to the brain analogy of everything that existed. Is now if we can understand everything about a file, like why should that not live with that file, right? And so instead of thinking about shares and permissions and then this other third-party tool that manages, like it should just all be smashed together. And so the A allows us to kind of eliminate data gravity, right? This infrastructure independence of like what, it doesn't matter where data was born, it's where do we need to use it now, and can we do that economically and efficiently? Two, you mentioned filtering things in and out, right? It's about high fidelity data pipelines. We may not need to process everything, right? Running stuff through GPUs still comes at a cost. And so if we can filter what data we should or shouldn't use, now we make sure those outcomes, right, have a much better qualities. And that's really where we see adoption happen. And then the proactive governance part, right? I mean, exactly like to Craig's question about determinism and what happens. It's like people are really just trying to get their arms around this entire thing. It's like, well, what if security is an attribute, right? Like one of the challenges we always had at Hammerspace, if you create this massive global namespace and you think about files just moving everywhere, well, what if all of that security premise moved with that set of files, right? A data scientist thinks about this as 22,000 files, and those may live in 3 different physical storage locations. But to them, it's just part of their research project, right? Or it's something they're trying to fine tune a model with. And so as we learn to attach all of that stuff with the files, we don't worry about losing that, right? Like everyone's biggest fear is when data gets copied from where it's born, is it loses its inherency, right? It's this whole feathers scattered into the wind and you can never get it back. Well, now we can ensure that all of that same security primitive moves along with that data, regardless of where you need to use it or where it came from. And what does that really mean for all of us, right? Like that's direct data monetization, right? To your point, you can buy all the componentry. You can order GPUs and servers and networks and storage. And I mean, that's if any of it can get delivered in this current kind of memory and SSD crisis. But like, that's all, I'm not going to call it commodity, but it kind of is, right? What's not commodity is the data. But we always see everybody focus on all the GPU stuff and then try to figure out data. And that's where we really feel like we've got to kind of flip this on its head. So there was a question real quick too, and I know we're 48 minutes into this. We'll wrap this up pretty quickly and hit any kind of last minute questions. But people were kind of asking, great, if I'm interested in this, how do I get it? Where does it run? Well, we've got partnerships with Supermicro, Cisco, and Lenovo, right? And so there's reference designs on those particular platforms. It makes it super easy to engage. We've got a great partnership with Hitachi, right? If you're a traditional Hitachi shop, that sort of stuff, we integrate fully with their IQ Studio, right, through MCP. But again, as we talk about differentiators, right, one of this comes into insert your server here, right? We're still a software-defined platform, as is Secuvy, right? We run in containers, we can do certain virtualized installs, but this means that, in this light of being really hard to get net new storage and net new infrastructure, we can actually run on Dell and HPE too, right? any type of server that's in your environment with a minimal level of GPUs, we can actually turn up AIDP within your organization, back to meeting where you are in your journey, right? Rather than forcing you into ours. And so what this really comes out to, right, is, in the terms of why AIDP and why should you care about this, and why should you take next steps with Hammerspace and with Secuvy, is because really about accelerating outcomes, right? Most of our competition says, hey, we're going to go scope this and buy this. And when you get it installed, you're going to then migrate data. And, let's just face it, migrations suck, right? There's nothing fun about those. And they get assigned to people who may not even understand how to do it. There's planning calls and massive amounts of man hours that go into this, right? Let alone before we actually wait for that data to copy. And so when we can do this in place, right, when we can reach into your existing storage environment, when we can kind of rein in that chaotic data escape, we see customers do this so much faster, right, than they can with traditional, even labeled AI storage platforms. And so if you're looking for something that can get you from A to Z quickly, right, if it's in your 10K, if your leadership's like, hey, where's my next AI application, or maybe you've had a couple failed AI POCs and you're looking for a better way to do this, this is really where Hammerspace comes in, right? We can do this in minutes to days, not weeks and months and quarters like traditional platforms, right? Because we've really built this in a holistic stack, right? And we use our technology to kind of use the existing infrastructure you have today. Like, that word simple is serious, right? We'll show you a demo. We'd love to engage with you deeper, where we can actually connect to external storage, pull it through our whole system, have it in the vector database and chatting with an LLM in sub 5 minutes. And you should shake your head and you should challenge me and be like, I want to see that demo. We'd love to show it to you. But again, what does it really come to? It's outcomes, right? We used to do IT infrastructure. It's like, well, here's your 3-year, 5-year ROI, right? We do power and cooling and stuff. AI ROI is like 3 days or 5 days. Reality, maybe 3 months or 5 months, right? But it's how quickly can we do this? We don't have years to wait. And it's changed in the last 2 months, right? So for us, it's really about how do we help you do this quicker, simply, and give you all the protection and guardrails that you would expect in a true AI data platform. So Kurt, I know we've got one last question for the audience.
We do, yeah. So we've got the poll question up here. While people are taking the poll, I've got one last question from the audience for you. And it's around operational flexibility. And so, this isn't a monolithic deployment that you just set and forget. This is really designed to, right, scale as folks need it. POC, project-oriented. And then how do you expand this thing to, corporate scale?
Yep. Yeah, so it's great that that's part of the summary, because in one of the previous slides we talked about starting small and not having to re-platform, and that is also, while it's probably number 4, right? Problem number 4 when people get into this, because it's like, hey, I may start this in the cloud, or I'm doing this, maybe on a Spark on my desktop or whatever, right? They start small in these projects, and then it's like, well, great, how do I then move that code to something else? Or maybe I start in the cloud and the economics don't work, right? Or for security reasons, I want to run that app on-prem. That's yet another migration. The beauty of the Hammerspace platform, right, is we can run on-prem or in the cloud, or both, right? And as we talked about, starting in those 4 servers, we can really scale that platform in any 3 vertices. I can add more GPUs and processing power if your documents end up changing more frequently than we first expected, right? I can add more capacity to that solution if we need it to store data there versus those other systems. Or I can scale the vector database and the performance side of that cluster, right, to take you from your first 500 users to 10,000 users. Never having to change platforms, never having to do another migration, never having to shift all of that stuff. And it's really that holistic beauty of AIDP and what a platform should be, right? Is because you're not locking yourself into a particular vendor's platform. We're agnostic across many of them. And, we've seen AI change so much in the last couple of years alone, maybe even the last couple of months, that it's really about future-proofing your organization with something that is flexible enough to meet tomorrow's operational challenges. So again, a pretty mixed set of results, huh, Kurt? We may have lost Kurt's audio. Kurt, I don't know if you're on mute or something.
I'm coming off of mute, I think. So I had a dog who was so excited to hear more about this solution.
No worries.
Also, was wondering about delivery, right? So we've got these solutions and they're delivered with hardware partners that you already talked about. Who is the expertise kind of in the middle as well? I think it's important that folks know that when they're implementing a solution, that they're getting it set up right, that they've got somebody who has experience that's helping shepherd them through this experience. So who do folks work with to kind of really get access to a solution like this?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and part of what we back to flexibility, right? It's just not like, hey, Hammerspace has to become your next vendor and one more thing. We work with most of the major channel partners, right, that you already buy from. You're already procuring everything from IT infrastructure to storage to compute from the likes of WWT and E+, and SHI and Computer Center, Polera, and all the ones out there. And so part of me says we've already got great working relationships with most of the major vendors. If they're a major AI vendor, we're doing a lot of work with them already, right? And people are starting to see, hey, I need something different than just another piece of storage, right? It really is about that stack. And to your point, like there's a lot of stuff that goes into these things. And those partners that you've been working with already know your environment. Like we're not going to ask you to go restart with somewhere else. We, again, want to meet you on your journey. That includes with how you're currently procuring and pulling new technology into your organization. So yeah, as you talk about next steps, right? Whether you reach out to Hammerspace, we're happy to do this one-on-one with you and go over a handful of stuff. We'd love to show you the demo, right? And talk about how easy this stuff happens. But reach out to your partner rep and be like, hey, I heard about Hammerspace and this AIDP thing. Can you tell me more, right? Because then we're going to have a more coordinated demo, a more professional footprint with you, because we're going to understand everything you're already doing in motion and how this can complement your existing journey. And so as we take away, we hope you kind of enjoyed what was here today, right? We know we covered a lot. And again, pushing all this into 50-some minutes of webinar is hard, right? We could spend 50 hours talking about everything from storage to data governance to how you size an AI application and those types of things. And so we're open to more conversation. Kurt, I know there's more ways to kind of take next steps.
For sure. So easiest way, right, is go ahead and click on the link that's here on the screen. You can schedule a private demo. Sam talked about flexibility. We have partners who have labs set up with AIDP. We can work with them to get you a bespoke setup and start working on your data immediately, right? I think that's the biggest takeaway here, is that this isn't a long, drawn-out, multi-month process. You can take all of this distributed data, all of these disparate tools that folks are trying to use within the environment, and really converge that into a single platform that delivers tangible outcomes immediately. And so go ahead and set up a demo today, and we'll walk you through how your life can change with AIDP. So I want to thank Sam and Prashant and Mike. Thanks for joining us today. And to the whole audience, thanks for sticking around with us. And we'll talk to you soon.